Hello, I'm Elizabeth Conley from Interview Skills Clinic. Now, have you got a civil service video interview coming up? I know how important they are and also a little bit stressful as well. This video is going to help you. I've been asked to cover this topic from comments that people have left below some of our other civil service videos. So I really hope it's going to help you succeed. Please remember to like the video, share it with a friend or colleague who might have a video interview coming up, and please leave your comments below. I always look at the comments below and always reply. If you haven't come across Interview Skills Clinic before, we successfully coach thousands of candidates for civil service interviews. Over the last 10 years, we've been around quite a long time, both externally and internally across many of the civil service departments, from entry level right the way up to DG level, which is Director General level. Now, this is likely to be a pre-recorded video interview at entry level, which is AO and EO level, possibly HEO grade. This is not to be confused with a live interview on Teams. So you just need to make sure that your interview is a pre-recorded video interview and not a live interview on Teams. Live interview on Teams tend to be from HEO. It can be both really, but HEO right the way up the grades. All right. So I'm going to take you through what I think are 7 tips, essential tips, that you need really to succeed. First of all, you are talking to a webcam. You're not talking to a person. So you're going to receive your questions as a pre-recorded video or a text or a combination of both. So the day before, you need to log on to make sure that your setup is as best as it can be. Now, sometimes people feel a little bit nervous about logging on because they think, oh, well, maybe the interview will start. But actually, you do have an opportunity to log on and just check your settings and make sure that everything, both your video and your mic, is working really well beforehand. Now, what's important for a video interview is you need to try to make sure that your setup is as much as possible is a setup as if the person opposite you is sitting. You're sitting around a table, and the person is sitting opposite you, and they're seeing you from sort of waist up, really, because or as close as you can get to that. Because what happens is when we move forward, what most people do, particularly on mobiles, and I understand it's really difficult, the setup is a little bit more like this. And why that is difficult is that every time you get a question that you're just thinking about, the person can actually see you thinking. It's almost like having a magnifier to the face, and it's just not a great look. And if we can move you a little bit back so that we're seeing more of you, then when you move your hands and you show natural energy and body language, that is really coming across. Okay. And if you are having a strength-based interview or a combination of behaviours and strengths, what we need to remember is that strength questions are assessed. 50% of the assessment goes on your energy level. And we can't actually gauge any energy from this, all right? Because all we can actually do is move our head. So try and move yourself a little bit back. Now, what tends to happen is as you move yourself back and you change your setup, you will be further away from your mic. So just check the sound quality and you see if you can use an external mic to improve the sound quality and see what it sounds like, all right? But you need to play around a little bit. Don't go into these interviews and think, okay, my interview's at 10 o'clock, at 9:30, I'm going to log on and do it. It's too late then. You need to be doing it the day before. Okay, great. Next, we need to check the job description. Now, this sounds very obvious, but it's really important with a civil service interview because, as I mentioned earlier, you could be having a strength-based or behaviour-based interview or a combination of both. So it's very important that you download Success Profiles. As part of Success Profiles, there's also a document called the Civil Service Strength Dictionary, and that's very important to download if you are having a strength-based interview. Okay. So you need to know the difference between a strength-based question and a behaviour question. Now, if you're not sure and you've downloaded these documents and you still don't know, then go back and watch our earlier videos, how to ace a civil service interview and civil service answering strength-based questions, because people find those videos really useful. All right. I'll share a link to both videos below, and I'll also add them at the end of this video. So hopefully you can just click on them and watch them. Simply, there are 9 behaviours in the civil service and there are 36 strengths. You will be told beforehand what behaviours you're going to be assessed against. If you are having a behaviour and strength interview, the strengths will sit underneath the behaviours. Now, I know that sounds very confusing. Let me try and explain that. On the last page of the Civil Service Directory, you will have the 9 behaviours out in front of you, and below each of those, so let me give you an example. Delivering at pace is a really common behaviour for an EO interview that gets asked. Underneath that, you will see that you could be adaptable, disciplined, catalyst, focused, organised, resilient, or responsible. So your questions could come from any of those strengths. Alternatively, sometimes what they do at EO level and AO level is they'll say it's a strength-based interview and you're going to be asked the questions about being focused and resilient, or focused, resilient and organised. All right, so they'll actually tell you what the strength is going to be. So it's really important to read not just the advert, but the job description, and to look at the documents that the Civil Service provide, because that's going to give you a really good understanding of these interviews, because they are very different to other interviews. A behaviour interview is similar to a competency-based interview, and you might already be familiar with that, but strengths are very, very different. Okay, so that's something that's very important. Now, if you are going to check out the job criteria and you've matched the strengths and you understand which behaviours you're going to be that you're going to be asked on, then the next important stage is really to make sure that you prepare. It's not enough to go into these interviews and think, well, I'm just going to make it up on the day. I'll just use my experience and I'll just answer freely. These interviews are more prescriptive than that, and preparation is really important. So for behaviour questions, you'll need to prepare star examples which match the behaviour that you're being assessed against. Now, questions are likely to start with, tell me about a time, give me an example. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, very, very similar to competency-based questions. Strength-based questions, on the other hand, require multiple short examples to really support your answer, whatever the answer is. And generally, they vary in style. They could say to you, they could start with, how do you communicate well with others? How do you cope well under pressure? Or it could be more, how do you feel? How do you feel when people are resistant to your ideas? Or would other people describe you as a good problem solver? So with strength-based questions, they sound much more like a natural conversation, and they do vary more. So we need to make sure that we've really prepared for the strengths and have a couple of anecdotes, ideally some recent anecdotes that you can draw from. And they don't have to be work-based. It could be it could be volunteering. It could be activities that you do. You might be applying for an EO role as a graduate and have had some part-time work. So you don't need to have necessarily a full-time job to think, well, I need to draw my example from that. It could be from anything. It could even be about your travels, or going away on a gap year, or anything that really answers the strength-based question. Strength-based questions normally require a 2-minute answer and no more, whereas a behaviour question is longer, more like 3.5 minutes. And that's because behaviour answers have more detail in them. You've got to follow that star structure and put much more detail in. Now, if you are preparing for behaviour questions, then you can download our free guide to preparing for civil service interviews, and you'll find that really useful, because in there you'll find our STAR framework with a little bit more detail than you sometimes see online, detail that we know works well, and you'll also sort of see typical questions that sit under each of those behaviours. You just need to, I'll put a link to the website below where you can sort of find that. Okay, fourthly, try not to write out your answers fully and learn them, because this is actually over-preparing. Now, I know, because, speaking to so many clients every single day, I know everybody finds this really difficult. You want to do well in the interview, and it's natural that you actually want to prepare and write out your answer. But the problem with that is they're not going to say to you, I'm just thinking here about the behaviour that you could be asked. So let's say it's working together. They're not going to say to you, can you give me an example of working together? Okay, that would just be too easy. They might say to you instead, tell me about a time when you worked well in a team. Or they could say, tell me about a time when there was conflict in the team. And the problem is, if you've written out your answer and you've only got one answer for each behaviour, it's very, very easy to get stuck. So what you need to do is prepare your answers a little bit more flexibly, thinking about the range of questions that could be asked. And I like to sort of see people using bullet points or even a mind map. Now, a mind map does not have to be grand. It can be something just you sketch out yourself, but just visually breaking up the situation, what my role was, all the things I did, why I'm sharing this example, etc. And again, you can find out more information in our preparation guide to that. Now, fifthly, if you have an online interview, the advantage of an online interview, and there's lots of disadvantages because you're not meeting somebody in person, but there are advantages. In an online interview, you can have some notes in front of you. You can have some notes around your screen, because when you're sitting a little bit back, you can see those notes, only bullet points, but you can actually see them. Whereupon, if you're having a face-to-face interview, it's more difficult to look at your notes. But just make sure that you're not looking down and reading your notes and not looking up at the screen, because you need to create that rapport and connection with the person. Imagine the webcam is just a person sitting in front of you. Okay. The other thing that I really think you need to avoid is try not to have your answers written out on the screen so that you're literally reading the notes. Because what happens is, when we do that, we sort of lose that sort of natural way of speaking. And that's what people like to see. So if I was to say, if I try and just read out for you now, and you'll sort of see the difference. Obviously, it's more structured, it's more formal, it's more correct, but it's just not as warm and natural. So if I was to read out now, let me just start. If you have an online interview, you can have some notes in front of you or around the screen, but don't read your answers directly from the screen, as it's more difficult to come across naturally and build rapport. So it's just not the same as just talking, having some notes in front of you and just talking around it. Okay. So the sixth tip is you need to smile. You really do need to imagine that person is right in front of you, and you need to build rapport with the camera. There are lots of tools out there to practice talking to a webcam, which I think can help. Now, in order to create these videos for YouTube, I use Vidyard. And there's a free version where you can practice aloud and record your answers and then play them back and have a look at yourself. And remember, when you play them back, don't do them again. Don't do them exactly the same, because I don't want you learning your answers so there's just a set way of answering. So to practice differently each time so that you just get to know these examples really well. It doesn't really matter how they frame the question. You can just engage with the question and answer quite naturally. Now, I promise you, I've got no connection with Vidyard at all. I'm sure there's lots of other tools out there that you can use. But, Vidyard is one that I use and I find quite useful. So lastly, be yourself. I know it's more difficult online, and I know that you need to really trust yourself to be yourself. But only by doing that will they get a sense of who you are. So try and just be as natural as you can. Now, if you need any further help and you're not getting the success you want, you can book a free consultation from our website, and we can discuss some coaching options with you. We are also looking, which are not ready at the moment, but we are actually creating some online courses for people who don't necessarily have the funds for that one-to-one coaching. Because, I understand that, when you're applying for an AO and EO level role, it's entry level, and then naturally the salaries are a little bit low. So when you're thinking about investing in yourself, it can seem that one-to-one coaching is more expensive. But so in a few months' time, not yet, but in a few months' time, we will have some online courses that people can go on to and use and play back as many times as they want. So I hope that's been really helpful. Good luck with your interview. And if you have any comments, please add them below. And if you need any further help, then you can reach out to us at interviewskillsclinic.co.uk. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.